Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So, Houston Texan owner Bob McNair was at a meeting with NFL players and owners, and they were talking about these protests at the NFL, these national anthem protests. And during this meeting, this man said, "We can't have the inmates running the prison." When you sit back and reflect on those words, when you think about a prison, that's a place where people are held for crimes that they have committed. When you think about an inmate, you think of a prisoner, someone who is not free, someone who is, for all intents and purposes, a modern day slave, someone who can't eat when they want to eat, can't freely go about as they choose, people who are forced to labor for the benefit of private corporations, just like in the days of slavery. And when you look at the 13th Amendment, you see here that it says neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the parties shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Meaning that if you commit a crime, you can be a slave. They can make you into a slave. You can be held in bondage. So when this man talks about inmates, he is essentially suggesting that these athletes are slaves, modern day slaves. You know, despite the fact that they are rich, despite the fact that they are famous, despite the fact that they are talented, in this man's eyes, they are nothing but slaves. And when you look at the NFL, you can see analogies there to slavery. How they are bought and traded, just like slaves were bought and traded. How they are examined, physically examined, just like slaves were physically examined. You can see the parallels. You can see the parallels when you have owners, like the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, telling players that they will have to stand during the playing of the national anthem or they will be disciplined. These people view these athletes as nothing but slaves. And sadly enough, some of our people are so eager to be a slave. Sadly enough, some of our people don't mind the fact that they made an example of Colin Kaepernick, much like how they made an example of Kunta Kinte when they cut off that brother's foot for running away. Much like how they made an example of that brother when he was defiant and held on to his African identity. They broke that brother and made him use the word Toby to describe himself. Call himself Toby. Adopt a foreign alien name as a symbol of his enslavement. They're trying to make an example out of that brother, Colin Kaepernick, as I said before. But yet and still, despite all of that, despite this despicable treatment from these owners, despite this general lack of respect for black players and black people, you still have black people still supporting the NFL, still watching the games. Just like well-trained slaves, they are still watching these games, still supporting these teams, still buying NFL merchandise, even though the NFL has proven that they don't give a damn about you. Here you had his brother, Colin Kaepernick, speaking up about a very important, timely issue that's affecting our people. And that's the issue of police brutality, where these pigs kill black people with impunity and there is no justice. This brother had the courage to stand up and say, how in the hell am I standing up for a national anthem about land of the free and home of the brave when my people can be killed in the street like modern day slaves and there is no justice? So for that, they punished that brother. But yet and still, you had these black people still watching football, still wearing and buying all this NFL merchandise, even though they told you that your best and brightest players are nothing but inmates, even though they told you you better get in line or we're going to get rid of you, even though we make up the majority of the players on these teams, they have no respect for black people, and yet and still black people still watch the games, still buy the merchandise. And I think that that's problematic. I think that it's sick. I think that it represents the psychosis that a lot of our people suffer from. This NFL, people are so preoccupied with sport and play. I mean, you go to any barbershop, you will hear brothers breaking down all the statistics on the teams. You will hear brothers knowing all the names of all the players and all the owners and this and that. These same brothers can't tell you the name of their state representative. These same brothers don't even know the name of their senator. These same brothers don't even know who their city council person is. But they are so preoccupied with sport and play that they know everything about every team. But when it comes to the things that matter, like your community, like the politics that affect your community, these people don't have a clue. It's time for us to wake up. And if this is not enough to wake you up to how these owners think about black people, I don't know what else will wake you up. Just imagine if every single black person said, I am not going to watch any NFL games. Imagine if every single black person said, I am not going to attend any NFL games. Imagine if every single black person said, I am not going to purchase any NFL merchandise. Imagine the power that that would have. Imagine the kind of influence that would have. Imagine if every single black player on every single team decided that they were going to leave the NFL and create their own league. Imagine the power of that. Imagine what would happen. I mean, this man talked about inmates running the prison. And when I think about that, I think about the idea of the slaves running the slave ship or taking over the plantation. And I think it's about time for the inmates, so-called inmates, to run the prison. It's about time for the so-called slaves to take over the slave ship and to take over the damn plantation, much like how Nat Turner took over plantations, liberated plantations. And the NFL is nothing but a modern day plantation, and it's time for the slaves to take it over.